Cadet Riley Mercer stepped off the landing shuttle, her boots crunching on the reddish soil of Outpost X-13. The planet was quiet, too quiet, with only the wind whispering through jagged rocks and tall, twisted trees. She had been sent here for her first solo field exercise, a test of courage, resourcefulness, and survival skills. Riley adjusted her pack and checked her scanner. Nothing unusual appeared. Yet she felt it, an uneasy tension that made the hairs on her arms stand up. She had barely taken a few steps toward the observation point when a low growl echoed through the canyon. Riley froze. Her hand went to her sidearm, though she hoped she wouldn't need it. The growl came again, closer this time, and it was followed by the sound of tiny claws scraping the rocky ground. From behind a cluster of boulders, 3 small creatures emerged. They were like nothing Riley had ever seen. Roughly the size of a large dog, they had sleek, dark fur that shimmered in the dim light. Their eyes glowed a bright amber and long sharp teeth peeked from snarling mouths. Their tails flicked with agitation, and they circled her carefully, growling low and warningly. Riley's heart raced. She had been trained for dangerous situations, but these weren't ordinary predators. Something about them felt intelligent, calculating. She kept her voice calm, speaking softly. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said. Her words were met with more growls, louder this time, and the cubs crouched as if preparing to attack. Then, on impulse, Riley did something unexpected. She crouched slightly, opened her mouth, and let out a low, firm growl. It was a mimic of the alien sound she had just heard, though rough and human. The cubs froze mid-step. Their ears twitched, eyes narrowing, and they stared at her with an expression that seemed confused. One of them tilted its head, unsure what to make of this strange human who dared to growl back. Riley held her stance, keeping her eyes locked on theirs. "I said I won't hurt you," she murmured. The growl vibrated in her chest again, steady and controlled. She noticed the cubs were no longer advancing, only circling more cautiously. One stepped forward, sniffing the air between them, then sat on its haunches, still wary but curious. She realized something important. These creatures respected strength. Not just brute force but courage. Riley had read about this species in Academy files. They were called Predrax, a dangerous predator known for intelligence, hunting skills, and strong family bonds. But these were cubs, young and untrained. They were testing her, trying to see if she was a threat or a weakness. Riley slowly lowered her hands, making herself appear less aggressive but still confident. The cubs circled closer, their growls softer now. She extended a hand cautiously. One amber eye studied her, then 2 small claws reached out, touching her fingers lightly. Riley held her breath. The cub flinched but didn't pull away. Suddenly, another sound came from the cliffs above, a screech high-pitched and threatening. Riley looked up and saw shadowy shapes moving between the rocks. She realized the cubs were not entirely alone. The rest of the pack was nearby, hidden and possibly watching. The cubs stiffened, but Riley's pulse quickened. She had to act wisely. "Easy," she whispered, her voice steady. She crouched lower, growling again softly. The cubs responded by lowering their heads, ears flat, and growling back in a kind of question, testing her once more. Riley knew she needed to prove she was not weak. Her training, instincts, and courage were all that stood between her and a potential attack. Over the next hour, Riley slowly moved through the rocky terrain, the cubs mirroring her every step. She mimicked their body language, growled in controlled bursts, and stayed calm despite their fangs and claws. She realized that even though they were dangerous, they were also curious and intelligent. They weren't blindly aggressive, they were testing her. By late afternoon, Riley had earned a fragile trust. The cubs followed her without aggression, though their glowing eyes remained wary. She set down a small ration pack from her supply, and one of the cubs cautiously approached it, sniffed, and began nibbling. Riley smiled. The first small victory had been won. She had proven that she could coexist with these alien predators, even if only temporarily. She found a small hollow among the rocks and motioned for the cubs to stay nearby. They crouched, growling softly, but allowed her to move freely. Riley knew the real test was only beginning. She had to survive the night on this harsh planet, with predators and unknown dangers all around. Yet something had shifted. The cubs were no longer just threats. They were potential allies if she could maintain their trust. As the sun dipped below the jagged horizon, casting long shadows across the red rocks, Riley stood tall and looked at the cubs. Their amber eyes glowed faintly in the twilight. She growled again, low and firm, and this time the cubs responded with matching tones, a sound of acknowledgement and challenge. Riley felt a thrill of triumph. She whispered to herself, I think we might just get along after all. And for the first time since arriving on Outpost X-13, Riley Mercer felt that she was not just a human cadet on a hostile planet. She was someone capable of holding her ground, of meeting alien ferocity with courage, and of forging a bond that might one day change everything. The cubs circled her once more, growls soft and curious, and Riley knew that the next days would test her skill, her bravery, and her humanity in ways she had never imagined. But for now she had survived the first encounter, and she had done it on her own terms. Riley Mercer woke to the pale light of Outpost X-13's twin suns filtering through the jagged rocks. The cubs were already awake, their amber eyes glowing softly in the dim morning. They moved quietly, sniffing the air and stretching their small but powerful bodies. Riley had learned quickly that every movement mattered around them. A sudden gesture could trigger fear, a soft tone could calm them, and her confidence could keep her alive. She stepped out of the hollow where she had spent the night, scanning the rocky landscape. The planet was alive with unseen predators, shifting shadows, and the distant rumble of wind over red cliffs. Riley adjusted her pack, checking her supplies. Today would not be a simple observation exercise, she knew it. As she moved toward a narrow canyon, the cubs followed closely, tails flicking, eyes alert. Riley had spent the night learning their behaviors. She had discovered that growling in response to theirs, holding her stance and showing calm confidence kept them from attacking. But now she faced a more subtle test, survival and courage in the wilds with the cubs. Suddenly, a small rockslide thundered down a slope ahead of her. Riley froze, her pulse quickening. The cubs crouched, growling, their bodies low and tense. She realized that this was a test, not of strength but of leadership. She needed to act quickly. "Stay calm," she whispered, crouching low. She gestured toward a narrow ledge above them, away from the slide. The cubs hesitated, growling softly, uncertain of her intentions. Riley took a deep breath and stepped forward with deliberate confidence. She growled again, low and firm, signaling they should follow. Slowly, cautiously, the cubs moved with her, one paw at a time, until they reached safety. Riley exhaled, her heart still racing. The cubs circled her once, sniffing and growling, then retreated slightly. She realized that they were assessing her courage, her ability to guide and protect them. It was a test of trust, and she had passed it. Over the next few hours, Riley explored the canyon, leading the cubs through narrow paths, over shallow streams and around jagged cliffs. Each step was a lesson in courage. When a larger predator appeared, a shadowy creature with long claws and glowing eyes, the cubs froze, growling defensively. Riley raised her hands slowly, growling in return, her tone firm and unwavering. The predator hesitated, sizing her up. Riley held her ground, and after a tense moment, it retreated, disappearing into the shadows. The cubs stared at her, their amber eyes wide with recognition. Riley realized that this was the moment they began to understand her. She was not prey, not a threat, but a being strong enough to lead them. Her courage had become a shield for all of them. As they continued, Riley noticed subtle signs of the cubs' personalities. One, slightly larger than the others, was bold and curious, testing the limits of her patience. Another was cautious, sticking close to Riley and observing every move. The third was playful, darting between rocks and pouncing on shadows, learning the terrain. Riley adjusted her approach for each one, firm with the bold, gentle with the cautious, and patient with the playful. By midday, the cubs had begun to respond more openly to her commands and gestures. When she signaled them to follow, they obeyed without hesitation. When she growled softly, they responded with their own low tones, a sound of recognition and communication. Riley smiled. She had not only survived their tests, she was beginning to communicate with them in a way that transcended species. A sudden noise shattered the calm, the distant roar of a territorial predator, larger and more dangerous than any Riley had faced before. The cubs froze, growling and hissing, their bodies taut with tension. Riley felt a surge of adrenaline. She knew she had to act fast. "Follow me," she commanded, pointing toward a narrow crevice she had noticed earlier. The cubs hesitated, uncertainty in their eyes, but her confident stance and low growl reassured them. One by one they followed her, squeezing through the tight space just as the predator's roar echoed closer. The creature passed, its glowing eyes scanning the canyon, but it did not see them. Riley exhaled slowly, relief washing over her. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the rocks, Riley led the cubs to a safe clearing. They circled her, tails flicking, eyes glowing softly. She knelt and offered them a small portion of her rations. They approached cautiously, sniffing and nibbling, showing that trust had been earned. Riley felt a quiet pride. Her courage had been tested and she had passed not just for herself but for the cubs. That night, Riley sat against a rock, watching the stars emerge in the alien sky. The cubs curled around her, amber eyes glowing, their small bodies warm and alive. She realized that this was more than survival, it was a bond. The cubs had tested her courage and in turn she had shown them hers. They recognized strength and compassion in her, qualities that went beyond weapons or technology. Riley whispered softly, growling gently in imitation of their sounds. The cubs responded, a chorus of small growls and hisses that filled the night air. She smiled. This was the beginning of something extraordinary, a connection between human and alien, built on trust, courage, and understanding. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Riley knew one thing for certain. She was not afraid. The cubs had shown her their world, tested her limits, and accepted her presence. And she had shown them that even a human could stand tall, growl louder, and face the dangers of a wild alien planet without backing down. For Riley Mercer, the test of courage was only the beginning. And as she drifted into a light sleep with the cubs nestled close, she knew that together, they would face whatever dangers the universe had in store. The morning sun painted the red rocks of Outpost X-13 with a warm, golden light. Riley Mercer rose quietly from her makeshift camp, stretching her stiff muscles. The cubs stirred around her, their amber eyes glowing faintly in the dawn. Over the past few days they had stopped growling at her on sight. Instead, they followed her carefully, testing her in small ways, nudging her and watching her for guidance. Riley had learned that mutual respect, not fear, was the key to surviving with these alien predators. Today would be different. Riley decided it was time to explore deeper into the canyon, a dangerous area known for territorial predators and hidden pitfalls. She checked her pack, ensuring her rations and survival tools were ready. The cubs moved in front and behind her, their small claws scraping over the rock, tails flicking in alert. Riley kept her movements slow and deliberate, letting them see her confidence and calmness. As they entered the canyon, Riley noticed tracks along the dusty ground. Larger predators had passed recently. The cubs crouched low, growling softly, their bodies taut. Riley whispered, "Easy. We can avoid them if we move carefully." The cubs seemed to understand, following her directions without hesitation. Suddenly, one of the cubs darted toward a narrow crevice. Riley froze, heart racing. She recognized the danger instantly, a rock slide could trap or injure them. "Stop," she commanded, her voice calm but firm. The cubs skidded to a halt, looking at her with wide eyes. Riley crouched and tapped the rock lightly, testing its stability. Then she guided the cubs around the hazard, using her hands and growls to communicate the safest path. The cubs hesitated, then obeyed. Riley felt a surge of pride. They were learning to trust her decisions, just as she had learned to read their signals. Mutual respect had begun to form, an unspoken understanding that strength was measured not by claws or teeth, but by calm judgment and courage. Hours passed as Riley led the cubs deeper into the canyon. They encountered a shallow stream, its water clear but moving swiftly. One of the cubs, the playful one, tried to leap across, slipping slightly and tumbling into the water. Riley acted immediately, growling firmly while extending her hand to help it out. The cub scrambled up, shaking its wet fur, and chirped softly. Riley smiled. The cubs were beginning to see her not only as a leader but as someone who could protect them. Later, as the sun climbed high, they spotted movement ahead, larger alien predators patrolling the canyon floor. Riley's pulse quickened. She signaled the cubs to crouch and stay still. Their growls softened as they obeyed. Riley remembered her training. Humans might be smaller, weaker, and less instinctive than alien predators, but intelligence, courage, and adaptability could turn the odds in her favor. Using rocks and shadows for cover, Riley guided the cubs silently around the larger predators. She whispered directions and growled softly when needed, her tone clear and confident. The cubs followed her without hesitation, mimicking her movements. When a predator's head swiveled toward them, Riley froze, waiting for it to pass, and the cubs stayed perfectly still. It was a tense moment, but they emerged unscathed. After the danger passed, Riley crouched to let the cubs approach. They sniffed her hands, rubbed against her legs, and chirped softly. Riley reached down and touched each one gently, feeling the pulse of warmth and connection. She realized then that they respected her not because she had weapons or human technology, but because she had shown courage, intelligence, and care. The cubs began to follow her more closely now, matching her pace, nudging her when she paused, and even playfully testing her by darting ahead and circling back. Riley laughed softly. She had never imagined that her first day on the planet would result in this strange partnership. But she felt a deep satisfaction. Trust had been earned and respect had been given. As afternoon approached, Riley led the cubs to a hidden plateau overlooking the canyon. The view was breathtaking, jagged rocks, glowing mineral veins, and a distant river snaking through the valley. Riley sat on a flat rock, and the cubs gathered around her. They were calm, tails curled, eyes observing, waiting for her to act. She offered them some of her rations, which they accepted with quiet eagerness. Riley realized that feeding them now was more than survival, it was a gesture of trust and alliance. One of the cubs, the cautious one, pressed its head against her chest. Riley held it gently, growling softly in response to its small chirp. It was a sound of understanding, a confirmation that mutual respect had been established. Riley's heart swelled. She had started as a human cadet facing unknown alien predators, and now she had formed a bond that was rare and powerful. As the sun began to set, the canyon turned golden and shadowy. Riley stood and stretched, the cubs moving around her in a protective circle. She felt a surge of confidence. Together they had faced hazards, predators, and the unknown. Each step had strengthened their trust and respect for one another. Riley whispered softly, "We make a good team, don't we?" The cubs chirped and growled in reply, circling closer. Their amber eyes glowed warmly, and for the first time, Riley felt completely accepted in their world. That night, Riley set up a small camp on the plateau. The cubs curled around her, close and alert, yet calm. She thought about the lessons she had learned. Courage could earn trust, intelligence could avoid danger, and mutual respect could bridge even the greatest differences. She had faced the alien wilderness and come out stronger, with allies who were once her enemies. As she drifted to sleep under the twin suns' fading light, Riley knew that tomorrow would bring new tests. But she also knew that together, with courage, cleverness, and mutual respect, she and the cubs could face whatever the planet, and the galaxy, threw at them. For Riley Mercer, the test of courage had evolved into a partnership of equals. The cubs were no longer just alien predators, they were her companions, her students, and her friends. And in that bond, she found a strength greater than any weapon, the respect and trust of beings from another world. Riley woke to the soft rustle of the cubs moving around her camp. The red dawn of Outpost X-13 painted the jagged rocks in warm light. Over the past days, the cubs had grown comfortable with her presence. They no longer saw her as a threat but as a guide, someone strong, calm, and clever. Riley stretched, feeling the familiar pulse of warmth from the bond they shared, a connection that had grown stronger with every challenge. Today, she planned to explore a deeper canyon area, rumored to be the territory of adult predators from the same species. The thought made her pulse quicken. If the adults discovered her, she might face a real test of courage, one that her skills and bond with the cubs would be tested against instinctive alien power. She gathered her supplies, checking rations and tools. The cubs watched her closely, their amber eyes following every move. As they walked through the rocky paths, Riley noticed signs of recent movement, footprints much larger than the cubs, deep claw marks in the stone, and tufts of dark fur caught on jagged rocks. She whispered, "Stay close and stay quiet." The cubs crouched low, growling softly in acknowledgement, their tails flicking in alert. The deeper canyon opened into a large clearing and Riley froze. Ahead, a group of adult predators emerged from the shadows. They were enormous, their sleek black fur glinting in the sunlight, muscles rippling as they moved with perfect control. Their eyes glowed like molten gold, focused on Riley and the cubs. She swallowed, keeping her body calm, remembering the lessons of the past days. The cubs stepped protectively around her, growling low, warning the adults to keep their distance. Riley held her hands steady, crouching slightly, growling softly to signal the cubs to stay calm. One of the adult predators stepped forward, its massive head tilting as it studied her. Riley felt the tension tighten in the air. Then the adult growled, a deep, resonant sound that reverberated through the rocks. Riley met its gaze, her own eyes steady, and growled back in her human way, low and firm. The cubs echoed her, growling in a chorus of recognition. The adult predator paused, tilting its head as if surprised. Riley realized that the adults were testing her, just as the cubs had tested her before. The larger predator circled slowly, eyes flicking between Riley and the cubs. Riley held her ground. She knew she could not fight these adults with strength alone, but she had something even more powerful: trust, intelligence, and courage. The cubs stayed close, their small bodies tense but calm, reflecting the confidence they had learned from her. Suddenly the adults relaxed slightly, lowering their heads. One of them stepped forward and touched the cubs gently with its nose, sniffing and nudging them. The cubs chirped softly, moving closer to Riley as if inviting her into their world. Riley realized then that the adults were not attacking. They were acknowledging her bond with the cubs, recognizing her courage and care. She knelt slowly, keeping her movements deliberate and calm. The cubs pressed closer to her, and the adults observed silently. Riley extended a hand toward the largest adult, who sniffed it carefully. Her pulse raced, but she remained calm, letting the creature sense her intentions. The predator's eyes softened slightly, and it let her touch its fur. Riley understood the significance of the moment. The bond she had formed with the cubs was now recognized by the adults. They accepted her not as an enemy, but as an ally, an honorary member of their pack. Her courage, patience, and intelligence had bridged the gap between human and alien predator. Over the next hours, Riley moved with the cubs among the adults, observing their hunting patterns, communication, and social structure. She mirrored their body language and growled in response to their calls, demonstrating her understanding. The cubs responded naturally and the adults watched with approval. Riley felt a profound sense of connection, something beyond fear or instinct, a bond that crossed species entirely. When a sudden threat appeared, a rival alien predator from another territory, the cubs and Riley reacted immediately. The adults joined them, moving with coordinated precision. Riley directed the cubs, signaling and growling, and the adults followed her lead. Together they managed to fend off the intruder, using strategy and coordinated movement rather than sheer strength alone. After the threat passed, Riley knelt among the cubs, holding them close. The adults lingered nearby, watching but not interfering. Riley realized the depth of what had happened. She had earned respect and trust not just from the cubs, but from the entire pack. Her courage, intelligence, and care had created a bond that no predator, no matter how powerful, could ignore. As the sun dipped behind the canyon walls, Riley sat with the cubs nestled against her, adults observing from a distance. She whispered softly, growling in gentle tones that the cubs echoed. It was a sound of understanding and recognition, a bond that had been tested, proven, and accepted. For the first time, Riley felt that she was not just surviving on a hostile planet. She had become part of something greater, a bridge between human and alien, a symbol of trust and courage that transcended species. The cubs looked up at her, amber eyes glowing with admiration and affection, and Riley knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them not alone, but with allies she had earned and a bond that could not be broken. Night fell and the canyon grew quiet. Riley settled into a small hollow with the cubs close, their warmth comforting. Above, the stars shone brightly, a reminder of the vastness of the universe. She thought about the bond she had formed, not just with the cubs but with their entire pack, and felt a sense of pride and peace. This was more than survival. This was connection, trust, and respect forged in the fire of challenge. And Riley Mercer knew that this bond, once revealed, would shape not only her future but the future of her relationship with these alien predators, and perhaps the galaxy itself. Riley Mercer woke to the gentle rustle of the cubs around her. Outpost X-13's twin suns had begun to rise, casting long shadows over the jagged rocks. The bond she had formed with the cubs, and now recognized by the adult predators, had changed everything. She was no longer just a cadet learning survival skills. She had become part of a new alliance, a bridge between human and alien life. The cubs chirped softly and nudged her with their small, warm bodies. Riley smiled and whispered, "Morning, team." They responded with low growls, playful and confident, showing that trust and respect had grown stronger than fear. Today she would explore a nearby plateau where reports indicated rival predator factions sometimes appeared. It would be a test, but Riley felt ready. As they moved through the canyon, the adults followed at a cautious distance, their eyes tracking Riley and the cubs. She felt the pulse of their awareness, a silent acknowledgement of her authority and courage. The cubs mirrored her steps, their tails flicking and ears alert. Riley had learned that leadership wasn't just about dominance, it was about calm intelligence, quick thinking, and empathy. The path to the plateau was treacherous, with steep cliffs and loose stones. A sudden rumble echoed through the canyon, and a rock slide tumbled down toward them. Riley froze for a moment, then reacted. She growled firmly, guiding the cubs and the adults to a narrow alcove she had spotted earlier. Everyone moved with surprising speed, the cubs following her lead without hesitation. The rock slide passed harmlessly, and Riley felt a thrill of accomplishment. The alliance had worked. Reaching the plateau, Riley surveyed the area. It overlooked the canyon below, a perfect vantage point. The cubs circled her, watching for danger, while the adults stayed nearby, their presence calm but alert. Riley realized that the predators no longer saw her as a human intruder, they saw her as part of their world, a trusted ally. Suddenly, movement appeared on the opposite ridge. A rival predator faction had entered the territory, their eyes glowing aggressively. Riley's pulse quickened. She could feel the cubs stiffen, but she remained calm, exhaling slowly. She knew that panic would ruin everything. The adults mirrored her stance, their muscles tense, ready to respond. Riley surveyed the terrain and devised a plan. She would use the cubs' agility, the adults' strength, and her own human creativity to defend the plateau. She gestured and growled softly, signaling the cubs to split and flank the rivals. The cubs obeyed instantly, moving with stealth and precision. The adults followed her cues, cutting off escape routes and protecting the younger predators. The rival faction paused, clearly surprised by the coordination between humans and the native predators. Riley's mind worked quickly. She picked up small stones and tossed them strategically, creating distractions. She growled again, louder this time, asserting confidence and control. The cubs responded, echoing her sounds, while the adults circled with silent efficiency. Within moments, the rivals retreated, recognizing that this alliance was stronger and more intelligent than they had anticipated. Riley exhaled, her chest heaving slightly. She knelt among the cubs, who chirped and nudged her affectionately. The adults lingered nearby, their eyes reflecting approval. The battle had been avoided, but the victory was clear. Trust, intelligence, and courage could achieve more than brute strength alone. Riley spent the rest of the afternoon observing the cubs and adults, noting their communication and interactions. She saw patterns, signals, and subtle behaviors she could mimic. By doing so, she strengthened the bond further. The cubs responded instantly to her gestures, and the adults adjusted their movements to include her in their coordinated actions. She realized that she had become not only a leader but a symbol of unity between human and predator. As the sun began to set, painting the canyon in red and gold, Riley gathered the cubs and adults together. She offered them portions of her rations, which they accepted with quiet eagerness. She sat among them, letting the warmth of their bodies and trust fill her. She understood now that this bond was more than survival, it was a living alliance, one that could endure across challenges and generations. Night fell and the stars sparkled above the jagged cliffs. Riley set up a small camp on the plateau, with the cubs nestled close and the adults nearby. She thought about the journey that had begun with fear and growls, with tests of courage and moments of doubt. Now it had evolved into something extraordinary, mutual respect, trust, and a shared sense of purpose. Riley whispered softly, growling in the gentle tones the cubs had come to recognize. They responded, echoing her sounds, and the adults emitted low rumbles, acknowledging her presence. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of belonging. Humans were smaller and physically weaker than these predators, but courage, intelligence, and empathy had allowed her to form a bond that even the most powerful alien instincts could respect. The next morning, Riley prepared to return to the academy, but the cubs and adults stayed close, moving with her as if part of her squad. She realized that she had created a new kind of alliance, one that crossed species, combining human ingenuity with alien strength and instinct. Together they could face dangers, explore new territories, and protect one another. As the shuttle arrived to take her back, Riley knelt among the cubs, stroking their fur and whispering, "We'll meet again. Keep growing strong." The cubs chirped and pressed close, and the adults gave a low, approving rumble. Riley stood, looking at the plateau and the canyon below. She knew this planet had changed her forever, and that the bond she had formed would endure beyond distance and species. Stepping onto the shuttle, Riley felt a surge of pride and hope. Humanity's courage, empathy, and ingenuity had bridged worlds, creating an alliance that others might have thought impossible. The cubs and adults' trust was proof that even the smallest human could inspire respect in the fiercest of alien creatures. As the shuttle lifted off, Riley looked out at the canyon below, glowing in the light of the twin suns. She whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." The alliance she had forged promised new adventures, new challenges, and a future where humans and alien predators could face the galaxy together. For Riley Mercer, the human cadet who had growled back at the alien cubs, the universe had opened a door. She had earned respect, forged trust, and built an alliance that spanned species, a bond that could change the course of survival, cooperation, and understanding across worlds. And she knew, deep in her heart, that she was ready for whatever came next.